My sister exposed my dad at my wedding. Guests gasped. The wedding stopped. He paid your ex to leave you, she said. She was right. I married him anyway. The moment I heard my sister's chair scrape against the church floor, I knew my life was about to implode. I object, she said, standing tall in her bridesmaid dress while 200 guests turned to stare. What followed was the kind of family secret that destroys everything it touches. 3 days later, I'm hiding in a hotel room with a wedding dress I'll never wear again and the sickening knowledge that I've been complicit in my own destruction for years. Let me start with the moment everything went to hell. If anyone can show just cause why this couple cannot lawfully be joined together in matrimony, let them speak now or forever hold their peace. Those words. Those fucking words that no one ever expects anyone to actually respond to. Like some ancient tradition we keep around as ceremony, never thinking it could detonate like a bomb in the middle of your perfect day. But then my sister stood up. I'll never forget the sound of her chair scraping against the floor. That horrible screeching noise that made every head in the church turn. I remember thinking, no, Megan, please don't do this. Not now. Not here. But the look on her face, Jesus, I knew exactly what she was about to do. I object, she said, her voice shaking but clear enough that even the ancient great-aunt in the back row could hear it. 2 words, and suddenly the entire church was dead silent. Like someone had pressed pause on the universe. I could feel Michael's hand tighten around mine. I couldn't look at him. I couldn't look at anyone. Then she pointed directly at our father, sitting proudly in the front row. He paid James to leave you, she announced, her finger aimed at Dad like a loaded gun. Your father paid your ex-boyfriend $75,000 to break up with you so you'd come back home. Collective gasp that rippled through the room was like something from a bad movie. But this wasn't a movie. This was my fucking wedding. And here's the part that's really going to make you hate me. I already knew. I've known for 8 months. And I went through with the wedding anyway. I need to back up. I need to explain. I'm not sure if I'm looking for absolution or judgment. Maybe both. Maybe I just need to get this out before it eats me alive. 4 years ago, I was engaged to James. We'd been together since sophomore year of college, 6 years. We had an apartment in Chicago. We had a dog. We had furniture we picked out together. We had a joint bank account, for fuck's sake. Everyone thought we were perfect together. I thought we were perfect together. I was working at a marketing firm and James was pursuing his PhD in literature. We weren't rich by any means, but we were happy. Or at least I thought we were. Then, out of nowhere, James sat me down one night and told me he couldn't do it anymore. He said he'd been questioning everything for months. He said he felt trapped, suffocated. He said he wasn't sure he ever really loved me or if he just loved the idea of us. I was blindsided. Completely and utterly destroyed. The breakup was brutal. I spiraled. Lost weight. Couldn't sleep. Called in sick to work so many times I nearly got fired. My friends tried to help, but I was inconsolable. After 2 months of this, my parents convinced me to come back home to Indiana to recover. I moved back into my childhood bedroom at 28 years old. Rock bottom has a very specific smell. It's your old high school perfume mixed with your mom's fabric softener and the crushing weight of failure. Dad was Dad. He's always been controlling. Protective, he calls it. Mom calls it just caring too much. I call it what it is. He needs to orchestrate everyone's life according to his vision. And his vision for me never included moving to Chicago with a penniless academic in the first place. When I moved back home, he was sympathetic, but in that I told you so kind of way. He got me a job at his friend's law firm as a marketing coordinator. Set me up on dates with appropriate men. Men with money, stability, and, most importantly, ties to our hometown that would ensure I'd never leave again. After about a year, I started to rebuild my life. I made new friends at work. I even went on a few dates, though nothing serious. I was functioning, but I wasn't really living. Just going through the motions. Then I met Michael at a charity gala my father's company was sponsoring. Michael was everything my father wanted for me. Successful real estate developer. Country club member. Friends with all the right people. And objectively handsome in that clean-cut Brooks Brothers way. He pursued me aggressively. Flowers at work. Expensive dinners. Weekend trips. He wasn't James. He didn't have James's quiet intelligence or his wry humor or his passion for obscure Russian novelists, but he was kind and steady and he wanted me. After feeling so thoroughly unwanted, that was intoxicating. 6 months later, we were engaged. Dad was ecstatic. Mom was relieved. My sister Megan was suspicious. "It's just so fast, Katie," she said over drinks a few days after the engagement. "Are you sure you're not just trying to replace what you had with James?" I brushed her off. Told her I was happy. And I was, in a way. Not the all-consuming, soul-deep happiness I'd had with James, but a comfortable, safe happiness. The kind that doesn't destroy you when it ends. The wedding planning was a whirlwind. Mostly driven by my mother and Michael's mother, if I'm being honest. I just nodded and agreed to things. Perfect venue? Great. Gorgeous dress? Sure. 5-tier cake? Whatever you think is best. I was going through the motions again, but I had convinced myself this was what growing up looked like. Passionate love was for college. This was adult love. Sensible. Practical. Safe. Then, 8 months before the wedding, Megan called me at 1 a.m. "You need to come over. Now." I could tell she'd been crying. When I got to her apartment, she was sitting at her kitchen table with a half-empty bottle of wine and her laptop open. "I found something," she said, her voice hollow. "And I don't know what to do with it." She turned her laptop to face me. It was an email from our father to James, dated 2 weeks before he broke up with me. "James, I hope you'll consider my proposal. As discussed, the amount is $75,000. In return, you will end your relationship with Catherine and encourage her to return home. You will make her believe this is entirely your decision and has nothing to do with me. You will not contact her again after the breakup. This is what's best for her, even if she can't see it now. She belongs here with her family, not chasing some bohemian fantasy in Chicago. The funds will be transferred once I receive confirmation that it's done. Regards, Richard Bennett." The world stopped spinning. I read the email 5 times. Then I vomited in Megan's sink. "How did you get this?" I finally managed to ask. Megan looked guilty. "I was helping Dad with some tech issues on his computer last week. He forgot to log out of his email. I wasn't snooping, I swear, but I saw James's name in the archived folder and I couldn't help myself." I sat there, numb, as she showed me the rest of the email chain. James's initial refusal. Dad's increasing offers. James's eventual capitulation. Confirmation that the money had been transferred. And the final exchange months later, James writing to ask if he could contact me again, saying he'd made a terrible mistake. Dad threatening to sue him for breach of contract if he ever reached out to me. $75,000. That was my worth to my father. That was the price of my happiness. That was what it cost to bring me back under his control. "You have to call off the wedding," Megan said. "You have to confront Dad. You have to call James." But I didn't do any of those things. Instead, I asked her to forward me the emails. I told her I needed time to think. And then I went home and stared at my ceiling all night, the weight of betrayal crushing my chest. The next morning, I called in sick to work and drove to our lake house 2 hours away. I needed to be alone. I needed to process. 4 days. That's how long I stayed there, barely eating, barely sleeping, just trying to make sense of my life. I reread the emails until I had them memorized. I wrote angry letters to my father that I knew I'd never send. I started to call James a dozen times but always hung up before it could connect. And I thought about Michael. Sweet, uncomplicated Michael who had no idea he was just a pawn in my father's game. When I returned home, I had made my decision. A terrible, cowardly decision that I've been paying for ever since. I decided to pretend I never saw those emails. I told Megan I didn't believe they were real. I suggested Dad was being scammed or that she had misunderstood something. I told her to drop it, to never mention it again. She was hurt, confused. We had the biggest fight of our lives. We barely spoke for months after that. But I continued with the wedding plans. I smiled in dress fittings. I picked out floral arrangements. I wrote heartfelt vows to Michael that weren't entirely lies. I did care for him in my way. Why? Why would I do something so insane? Part of it was shock, I think. The kind of betrayal that's so enormous your brain simply refuses to process it. Part of it was fear of blowing up my entire life again, of starting over from nothing a second time. But mostly it was this twisted, dark desire for revenge. I wanted to go through with this wedding that made my father so happy, knowing that it was built on his lies. I wanted to bind myself to the man he had chosen for me, knowing that I would never ever forgive him for what he'd done. I wanted him to look at my marriage every day for the rest of his life and think he'd won, while I carried the poisoned truth inside me. Fucked up, right? I told you you'd hate me. As the wedding approached, I became more and more detached. Michael noticed. How could he not? He asked me several times if I was having doubts. Each time I assured him I was just stressed about the wedding. Just tired. Just nervous. More lies. The night before the wedding, Megan came to my hotel room. It was the first time we'd really talked in months. She begged me one last time not to go through with it. You don't love him, Katie. Not really. And this secret will poison everything. I've moved on, I told her. Those emails don't change anything. I'm marrying Michael tomorrow. She left in tears. I should have known then that she wouldn't let it go. My sister has always been the brave one, the one who speaks truth no matter the cost. I just never imagined the cost would be so high. Back to the wedding. Back to that horrible suspended moment after Megan's accusation. My father stood up, his face purple with rage. How dare you, he hissed at her. How dare you ruin your sister's day with these delusions? But his eyes gave him away. He knew he was caught. Everyone who knew him well could see the guilt flash across his face before the anger took over. The officiant, poor man, had no idea what to do. He looked from me to Michael to my father to Megan, waiting for someone to take control of the situation. And then Michael turned to me, still holding my hands, and whispered, "Is this true?" That's when time truly stopped. In his eyes, I could see he was giving me one chance to deny it, to act shocked, to stand with him against this unexpected attack. I opened my mouth to do just that. To tell the lie that would save the day, that would keep this elaborate house of cards from collapsing. But I couldn't do it. Not with Megan standing there, finally speaking the truth I'd been too cowardly to face. Not with my father's guilty eyes darting around the room. Not with James's last email to my father burned into my memory. Asterisk, I made a terrible mistake. I still love her. Asterisk. Yes, I said, my voice surprisingly steady. It's true. The gasp from the crowd this time was even louder. Michael dropped my hands like they'd burned him. You knew? He asked, his voice breaking. You knew about this? I nodded, tears finally spilling over. I found out 8 months ago. His face, God, I'll never forget the look on his face. Confusion, hurt, betrayal, all washing over him in waves. Why didn't you tell me? Why would you still marry me if you knew? I couldn't answer him. How could I explain the twisted logic that had led me to this moment? How could I admit that part of me was marrying him just to spite my father, even as another part genuinely cared for him? My father started shouting then, denying everything, calling Megan unstable, calling me confused. Michael's parents stood up, demanding answers. Someone in the back started crying loudly. I think it was my mother. Michael just stared at me for one more long moment. Then he turned and walked out of the church. I should have run after him. I should have begged for forgiveness, tried to explain. But instead, I turned to my father. "Show them the emails, Dad," I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Show them what you did to me. To James. To all of us." He kept denying it, but his face told the truth. The wedding guests were in chaos now, some leaving hurriedly, others gathered in shocked clusters, whispering furiously. My mother was sobbing in her seat. Megan stood alone in the aisle, looking both vindicated and devastated. I walked out then. Not dramatically, not running, just walked. Past the stunned faces. Past the elaborate flower arrangements that had cost more than my first car. Past the life I'd been pretending to want. Side, I saw Michael sitting on the church steps, his head in his hands. I sat down beside him, not touching, just there. "I'm so sorry," I said after a long silence. "I should have told you." "Why didn't you?" he asked, still not looking at me. "Because I was a coward. Because I didn't want to face what it meant. Because—" I took a deep breath. "Because part of me wanted to punish my father by going through with the wedding he wanted so badly, even knowing what he'd done." Michael finally looked at me then, his eyes red-rimmed but dry. "Did you ever love me at all? Or was I just a prop in this drama between you and your father?" Question cut deep because I knew I deserved it. And because I wasn't sure of the answer myself. "I care about you," I said finally. "I do. But I don't think I ever got over James. I don't think I ever really tried to." He nodded slowly, as if he'd known this all along but had been hoping to be wrong. "You deserve better," I told him. "You deserve someone who loves you completely, not someone who's using you to run from her past." "Yes," he said simply. "I do." We sat there for a while longer, this bride and groom who would never be husband and wife, while inside the church our families dealt with the fallout of 3 years of lies. Eventually, Michael stood up. "I need to go explain things to my family," he said. "Figure out what to tell everyone. Cancel the reception. All of that." "I'll help," I offered weakly. He shook his head. "I think you've got your own mess to clean up." And he was right. He was so right. Michael's parents took charge of notifying guests that the reception was canceled. My mother took to her bed with a migraine. My father locked himself in his study and refused to speak to anyone. And Megan waited for me at her apartment, a bottle of tequila and 2 shot glasses on her coffee table. "I'm sorry," she said when I showed up still in my wedding dress. "I couldn't watch you do it. I couldn't watch you marry him knowing what Dad did, and knowing you were settling." "I know," I said, collapsing beside her. "You did what I should have done months ago." We drank until the sky grew light. We cried. We laughed at the absurdity of it all. And for the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe again. The next morning, hungover and still processing, I finally did what I should have done the moment I saw those emails. Called James. That was 3 days ago. Since then, my life has been in free fall. Michael returned all the wedding gifts with a brief, dignified note explaining that the wedding had been called off due to family circumstances. My mother isn't speaking to either me or Megan. My father has threatened to cut us both off financially if we continue spreading these malicious lies. But the truth is already out. Too many people heard. Too many questions have been asked. His reputation in our small community is in tatters, and he knows it. As for James, he cried when he heard my voice. Actually cried. He told me taking my father's money was the biggest mistake of his life. That he'd tried to contact me dozens of times afterward, but my father had threatened him with legal action. That he'd even driven by our house once but lost his nerve when he saw my car in the driveway next to my father's. We talked for hours. About everything we'd been through. About the years we'd lost. About whether there was any way back from this kind of betrayal. "I understand if you can never forgive me," he said at the end. "But I need you to know that I never stopped loving you. Not for a single day. I don't know what's going to happen with James and me. There's too much hurt, too much time lost, too many complications. But for the first time in years, I'm facing the truth. All of it. The ugly, painful, liberating truth. I don't know if I'll ever speak to my father again. I don't know if my relationship with my mother can survive this. I don't know if I'll stay in this town where everyone now knows my humiliating story. All I know is that I'm done living a life built on lies. I'm done being the dutiful daughter, the perfect fiancée, the girl who never makes waves. My sister saved me from a marriage I was entering for all the wrong reasons. She had the courage I lacked. And now I have to find the courage to figure out what comes next. I'm writing this from a hotel room, waiting for the dust to settle, trying to make sense of how my life imploded so spectacularly on what was supposed to be my wedding day. And despite everything, the public humiliation, the family in ruins, the uncertain future, I feel lighter than I have in years. Truth really does set you free. Even when it sets your whole world on fire first.